Hello, and welcome to this empowering podcast series. We'll be starting out today with our Stories That Heal with Dr. Vonya Lewis Thornton, supported by Katrina Weich, Vanessa Cummings, and Karen Schaefer. We are collaborating through Empowering Education to bring you this podcast series.
Hurt and recovery is a cyclical experience. It's a journey. It takes time. In leveraging our own personal strengths and assets, we can begin the journey to heal from our past traumas and hurts. We must give ourselves the opportunity, space, and time to do so. We can choose to walk through the door that keeps us revisiting those same familiar spaces, or we can choose to walk through the door that allows us to grow from the new experiences. In this podcast, Vonya will share her process of dealing with and growing from her past, standing on the affirmation that self is enough.
So, Vonya, you ready to share your story?
Sure. As ready as I'll ever be. I'll put it that way. A little nervous, but yeah, I'm ready as I'll ever be.
Okay. So just share in your own way.
You know, it's interesting because when I think about hurt that I've had in my life, obviously I've had hurts in my life. I'm 64 years old. You can't go 64 years of life without being hurt. At least if you put yourself out there to love and to just enjoy life, that there's going to be some hurt that comes with it. So when I think about the hurts that I have, I think about that it's been cyclical, in that there has, and I'm thinking about the male relationships that I've been in, that when I go back and look at my loves in my life, and I put loves in quotes, and I put it deliberately in air quotes, because some of them were more lust and infatuation than they were true love in hindsight. At the time, I thought they were love, but more of infatuation. But when I think about those, I think about the fact that I followed my mother in taking a subservient position, and that subservient position trying to be supportive of the man in your life, ultimately put me in a position that the man could crush my spirits. And so yeah, I've definitely been hurt. And you know what I mean by that, as I'm stumbling through this, as what I mean by that is that there's been common threads that have gone through it. Every man that I have been involved with, seriously, has had the propensity towards being addicted to something. And that addiction manifests itself in getting as much from me as it possibly could, and me really bending more to their will and bending more to their direction of wanting to take life than it was me taking hold of my own life. And so when I think about the question again, have I been hurt? Yeah. Have I learned from those hurts? Finally. And I say finally because it wasn't easy. It was cyclical. It really did take a bad marriage and a hard divorce that caused me to really hold a mirror up to my face and say, the common thread in this part of your life in these chapters of your life has been you. And as such, what is it that you're doing that causes you to find yourself every time in a position that you're handing over the keys to your life, the keys to your bank account, the keys to your car, the keys to everything that has been important to you, at least at the moment, that you willingly, because nobody took them from me. Nobody took the money that I gave to some guys. Nobody stole those from my accounts. I handed that money over willingly. And what about you, Vonya, causes you to take that posture in your life? And so, a long answer to that question, but it's been a process for me, and it's been a long process. And I don't, even when I look today, I don't see myself as healed. I had a friend who just said to me the other day that the problem with the news that you just received is that person has moved on and you haven't. And it was like a slap in the face. But it was true that I have not moved on in the way that I want to. I'll put it that way. And so I'm sorry. I just kind of rambled through that one, but yeah.
Wow, it just, you can feel the hurt that you're feeling. You can sense that hurt even now as you're talking about it. And I'm wondering whether or not you've had an opportunity. You mentioned your friend, but I'm wondering if you've had an opportunity to explore. I think it's amazing that you're asking the question, how am I contributing to that? And I'm just wondering if you found supports around you, people to talk with and process some of this with.
I found my primary care physician referred me to a counselor. And that's the person that I think I've been the most honest with. Mm-hmm. And that I have been able to obviously open up more with. Some friends have this piece of the story and other ones have this piece of the story. But I really can't think of a friend that I have shared the whole story with. And so one of the things that I found was that I had to let go of that pride, mm-hmm. those old stereotypes that say Black people don't need counselors. All you need is the Lord. All you need is to pray about it. And that sometimes I had to seek out professional counseling. And that was okay. Because I'll share that on the day that my divorce was final, my counselor previous to that had said to me, why don't you make an appointment with me for right after your divorce is final? And I was like, that might be a good idea. And I walked into her office an hour afterwards, and she looked at me and she said, you're fine. You don't need me today. And I laughed because I'm like, you know what? I don't. That afternoon, I got on the airplane, went to Seattle for my last residency for my doctorate. And I was surrounded by classmates that I had never met before, who would not allow me for a moment to wallow in woe is me. And yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm probably saying more than what you ladies really want to hear, But the professional counselor really has been was the key to me starting the healing process and recognizing even what it is that I want in life. You know, I've often said, I don't know really what I do want, but I know what I don't want. And she helped me to understand that that was okay. That knowing what I wasn't going to tolerate anymore, trusting my instincts at the beginning of relationships, trusting my instinct when somebody comes into my house and they keep going to the kitchen and suddenly the bottle of wine is almost gone and I haven't touched it. That instinctually kind of caused me to go, well, that's odd. But she helped me to move to a point where I trusted that instinct. And so that I was able to kind of file it in the back of my mind in a way that it never left, but that as soon as I got confirmation that that was an issue, I said, yo, I'm out of here because I'm not going down this road again. And so working with her, because my counselor was a female, but working with her allowed me to have the confidence to be okay if I say, you know what, this ain't working. And I know using the word ain't isn't proper, but but this ain't working. And that you're going back down the same path that you went down before.
Can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
You said that you've seen this as a pattern in relationships with males.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen it in your entire lifetime, or did you recognize it later in life, or where have you been? Is multiple relationships? What was it that made you get to that conclusion that it's these male relationships that you're finding yourself repeating the pattern that you grew up in?
I've recognized it late in life. I will say that, and I'll share that my ex-husband and I had one counseling, and I put there again counseling in quote, one counseling session. And something came out of my mouth that was there again was a revelation for me. Because one of the things that I said to him was, I feel like I'm a mother back in the relationship with my father. And my parents had a very volatile relationship, not physically volatile, but they argued a lot. And a lot of that arguing came from the fact that my father came in the house inebriated. And that was the first time that in all those years that I had verbalized it. And at that point in time, I'm 59 years old. But in all those years that I really had been able to verbalize and to say out loud, and even I should say recognize for myself that, oh, you are repeating what your mother was. And I love my mother dearly. I so appreciate that one of the things she said to me when my father died was that she had no regrets because she did the best that she could do. And I appreciate that. And I respect her for that. But I think growing up in that environment set a bad pattern for me. And I recognize that now. That set a pattern for me that I was willing to be less than.
So when you think about the things that you have shared. I heard you say that, you've learned from your past hurts. And I also hear you say, about how a lot of the things that you encountered while you were young, you started seeing that kind of those patterns, in your adult life.
Right.
What would be some of those lessons, concrete lessons that you think, or that you feel like you have learned from, this experience that you're talking about?
And I'm going to go to Cleveland to come back to, I'm in Xenia, but come back to Xenia to give you an answer. As a part of my my doctoral degree, I had to do a genogram. And the genogram helped me to see patterns that generationally have been in my family. And I think that was kind of the opening crack to, there really is such a thing as generational trauma. And there really is such a thing as the socialization that you get as a young child being kind of implanted on your psyche. And I can put words to that now, but even at the time I couldn't.
Right.
But the genogram really was like salt on ice. That when I sat down and did it and went back and read it, because I really wasn't reading it as I was processing. As I was putting it together, I really wasn't reading what I wrote. And I went back to read it before I turned in the assignment. And I was like, wow. And so the process of writing it, I think, was like salt on ice, in that it just started to dissolve some of those layers that I had built up over the years. And I found out that writing my story, writing my narrative, I don't journal regularly. I promised myself this year, that was one of my New Year's resolutions, that 2022, I was going to journal every day. I think I made it the first 20 days. They say it takes 21 days to make a habit. So I haven't touched it since then. But the writing the story and just letting it flow was healing for me. Not necessarily sharing what you wrote. I had to put it into an assignment for that first genogram. I was working with a group that was putting together sheep epistles that were designed to help women who have been hurt by people in the church. To help
Did you
them.
call those sheep epistles?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the first story that I wrote was so healing that I really was able to go back and put words to when I realized that I was done with the relationship. This is my marriage. But I realized that I was done with that the moment that I realized that. Where I was, what I was doing, what was being said. And that was like, wow. And I read that story to this friend a couple of nights ago, who said, what I'm hearing in that story is that this person damaged your psyche. You allowed that to happen, and that you that was a turning point for you in understanding yourself. And it was, yeah. So I still read it and I'm kind of like, wow, you did a pretty good job writing that. You know, it was supposed to be written as a narrative that would capture somebody. And, you know, one of the things we were told is to drop the person into the situation. Mm-hmm. Don't give a lot of background, just drop them into the situation. And I'll be honest with you, if I may cuss for just a second, I started it with, I was sitting on that damn brown chair. And throughout the story, that brown chair that I was sitting on when this happened mm-hmm. was a pivotal point for me to get rid of that brown chair and to get rid of really everything else that was associated with that. So anyway, I'm sorry.
No apology. Yeah, you said you're healing, but you also mentioned that when somebody told you that the other person had been done with it, but you had not, and that was like a slap in the face. So where do you put yourself in the healing process right now?
I put myself close to the end of the healing for that hurt. I put myself close to the end. And the one thing that I have come to understand is that you don't turn on the light switch, that you're suddenly healed, mm-hmm. that it is a process. And I am further along than I was, but I'm not as far as I thought I would be at this point in time, I'll be honest. But it's okay because it's a process. And I've recognized that I'm not going to lower myself and to be something to be something other than who Vonya really is. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm wondering, Vonya, if you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old self or your 25-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself as it relates to this hurt?
Trust yourself. Be comfortable in your own skin. Be comfortable with your own brain. And that you don't have to be less than you really are to please someone else. And yeah, because I think that when I look back at the younger Vonya, one of the things that she's always done is that she has always presented herself as less intelligent than she was.
Wow.
And or that she is. That was, but was at the time and is in the current situation. But I think now it's like, you know what, you either deal with the Vonya that's got a mind and thinks, or you don't. And it's okay if you don't. But I'm not going to hide that I'm a thinking individual who has, that's one thing I can say that I really praise my mother for, is my mother was always a person that encouraged you to think. Mm-hmm. And then I hooked up with people who I had to be dumb for because I was smarter than them. That sounds so egotistical, and it's not meant to be. But when I look back, all of the significant relationships that I was in, I was smarter than the individual, and that I dumbed myself down to massage their egos. You know what? Vonya can have her ego massaged. Vonya needs to find somebody who will say, I love you for who you are, and what you bring to the table. And if I can't find that, it's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay.
That's very key with what you just said, because a lot of times, people find themselves, and I'm going to speak for myself, myself into that, because I can totally identify with, getting involved and being in relationships where you have to dumb yourself down in order to make this other individual feel okay in their skin, and feel as if, we're on equal playing fields, or if not, they are in a higher playing field than what you are.
Right.
So I totally understand that. What would you say to someone who is, going through that kind of situation themselves, with, being wrapped up in, situations where they have to dump themselves down for, to feel loved by someone?
Yeah. That it's not worth it. That to do everything you can to reaffirm yourself, and understand that the reaffirmation of yourself is, if it has to be, is sufficient. And that, yeah, that it's not worth it. And to do everything in your power to break out of that cycle. Because one thing that we do with that is, I don't have any biological children. But one thing that often happens is that we implant that on the next generation of young women.
Mhm.
That you can't be the next rocket scientist because you're a woman. And we don't do it intentionally, but we do put boundaries around their brains that, through our example, through my example, if I had young girls, through my mother's example, I'm sure through her mother's example, I'm sure through her grandmother's example, that said that you can't be because. And no, we need to know that we can be. We can be.
I just want to push you as my colleague and my friend. You said something about 21 days. If you do something 21 days, it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
I think I want to challenge you for 21 days of not apologizing for something that needs no apology, because you are fabulous and your voice matters, and the words that you're speaking are important. And thank you so much for sharing them, and no apology needed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I have one maybe last question.
Okay.
What was your aha moment? Was it the genogram? Was it somebody saying something? What was your aha moment when you really realized that you needed to make a change in how you were getting into relationships, and you needed to realize that you were living what you learned?
I think that the final aha moment was when I expressed that during that counseling session. When I expressed that, I feel like, one of the things that, if anyone who has ever lived with an alcoholic that is troubling is that you don't know who's walking in the door because you don't know how much alcohol they have. And when I expressed that during that counseling session, not intentionally, not expecting to, was surprised myself. I think that was like the final aha moment. Yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions, ladies?
Or anything we didn't ask you that you felt like we should have asked?
No, not that I can think of.
Do you feel a weight being lifted off of you now? How are you feeling about you now that you've had these revelations? How have you seen Vonya change or Vonya grow? What is this new Vonya? Who is the new Vonya?
Yeah, she is freer. She doesn't have all the weight lifted off of her. I would lie to you if I said she did. Again, because I think healing is a process, but she has most of it lifted off of. And she is able to at least get her feet off the ground a little bit. Maybe not to soar in the sky yet, but she's able to at least be comfortable in who she is and what she has to contribute. And that, I appreciate, Karen, you saying that 21 days of not apologizing, that I really don't have, and it's not that I don't make mistakes, we all do, but that I don't really have a whole lot to apologize for. And for my apologies to be sincere, it needs to be selective. It needs to be for things that I really am sorry for. And just saying, I'm so sorry I rambled, is not really sincere, and y'all wouldn't understand it when I said I was really sorry for something that I did that maybe offended you. And so that's kind of where I am right now.
Ms. Vonya, I picked some very key things out of what you said. They're going to now be affirmations on my wall.
Okay.
And two things. The first one is the affirmation of yourself is enough. And I think a lot of times we forget that key piece about that. You know what I mean? When we reaffirm ourselves or we go through something and we say, okay, this enough is enough. I am here in my life. This is what I'm going to do. A lot of times we forget that that's just enough just to be in that space and who we are at that moment of time. And then the next one being, I love the phrase, we can be, because you can just fill that into whatever, right? We can be great, or change that from we can be to I am great. I am, and really standing on those affirmations of ourselves to continue to rebuild ourselves, because you're absolutely right. The healing process from a traumatic experience or from hurts in our lives, it's a process. It's just that, it's a process. There's no magic switch, like you said. I mean, it takes time, right? And in that time, we have to make sure that we give ourselves that time, that space, that opportunity, and to continue to know that in this moment of time, I am enough, and I don't need the bad things or the baggage that I had along with me. And getting rid of that brown chair. We all have a brown chair in our lives that we got to get rid of.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, yeah. That like I said, she said, drop the person in the moment. I was sitting in that damn brown chair. And so I end the story, the same story, and I'll share it with you, ladies. Karen has read it, but I end the story with, and I got rid of that damn brown chair. Yeah. So.
And that was cleansing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. It really was. I will share with you, ladies, if I may, just take another minute, that there was a sectional that I had purchased with my ex-husband that I never liked. It was his choice, and it filled the room. When he moved out, I wasn't going to let him take it because I didn't have anything else to put in that room. So that was kind of my like, bump you. I'm keeping this, but I never liked it. And I got rid of that a couple weekends ago, and that was a good feeling. That was an awesome feeling because it was the last thing in the house that sometimes reminded me of him because I never liked it. And so when he went out of the house, I felt like the weight of the world had been lifted on my house, and that I've done what I wanted to do with this house mainly. I've done with it what I want to do with it, but like now this house is mine. 5 years later, this house is mine.
Wow.
And, yeah.
So sometimes we have to get rid of the baggage.
Yeah.
And that baggage may mean getting rid of some furniture and some things and moving them out so we can have a fresh picture.
Yes. Yeah.
A clean slate, as it were.
Clean slate. Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So did you burn it or did you just have some?
I had a young lady who was buying her first house. She's 21 years old and she's buying a house. And she wanted a sectional. And I know her mother, and her mother I was talking about this sectional that I was looking for something else to go in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was just going to call Habitat for Humanity. And she said, her daughter's name is looking for a sectional. Take a picture of it. And I took a picture of it. She sent me back. I texted it to her and her daughter. And both of them almost immediately sent back and said, we'll take it. What do you want for it? Nothing. Because I was just going to give it to Habitat for Humanity. And so her father and her mother came and picked it up. And it was, yeah.
You bless somebody else.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Thanks, Vonya, for sharing with us today. We know that your story was touching, it was emotional, it had some difficult times. But we know that through it all, you were able to share with us how you're journeying through the process and how you're also journaling through the process. If her story touched you, if you could relate to it in some way, if you found that in listening to her that you've experienced some hurts and now you're trying to figure out how to go through it, continue to view our podcast, because others of us who were participating today are going to share our stories later. You'll hear from each of us and how we've been hurt, been betrayed, been frustrated, but how we've grown stronger through the process and how we're growing through the process. So continue to view with us, continue to stay with us. If you're going through a struggle right now, reach out for help. You can leave us some comments if there's something you'd like to ask or something you'd like to hear from us. And just know that we will continue to share with you, because this journeying through the experiences that we have in our lives is important. And sharing them openly and honestly allows you to know that you are not alone. Thanks for sharing with us today. Stay tuned for our next podcast. Have a blessed day, and know we will be in touch, so you stay in touch with us. God bless.
Look forward to seeing you back here when Katrina White tells her story 1 month from now.